The village square was alive with cruel excitement. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and the sky smoldered with a red twilight that bled into the trees. Fires burned in tall clay pots, their smoke curling upward like the breath of restless spirits. At the center of the square, a young woman knelt on the packed earth, her thin shoulders trembling as the villagers circled around her. She was only 19, her eyes wide and desperate, searching for mercy in the faces of people she had known all her life. But there was none. The murmurs of the crowd grew sharper, louder, each word a blade cutting deeper into her already bruised heart. "She sings to steal blessings," one man hissed. "She calls spirits in the night," another spat into the dirt. Her stepmother, standing proud at the front of the gathering, raised her chin and pointed a bony finger at the girl. "She is cursed. Every misfortune that has befallen us comes from her tongue. Her songs are not songs of joy, they are charms weaving sickness and drought. Tonight we end her wickedness." The girl shook her head violently, strands of her braided hair whipping across her tear-streaked face. She opened her mouth to speak, to protest, but the crowd drowned her out with jeers. "Silence her. Make her stop. Let her voice be taken." The eldest man in the village, draped in a robe of woven bark cloth, stepped forward with slow, deliberate movements. In his hand he carried a bowl of ashes and crushed herbs. His eyes, clouded with age yet sharp with authority, did not meet hers. Instead he spoke in the low rhythm of a ritual chant, words that tasted of iron and smoke. The girl's stomach twisted. She had heard whispers of this ritual before, an ancient curse said to strip a person of their voice, leaving only air in its place. It was forbidden, for it was crueler than death. To live without a voice was to live without power, without presence, without self. "No," she mouthed, though no sound came through the sobs clogging her throat. She tried to rise, but two men shoved her back down into the dust. The elder sprinkled the ashes over her head. Cold grains slid down her face and clung to her skin like second flesh. Then, taking the herbs, he pressed them against her lips. His chant grew louder, words rolling like thunder. The girl's chest convulsed, a burning sensation rising in her throat. She coughed, choking on air that refused to carry her voice. She tried again, forcing a cry from her lungs, but only a hollow gasp came out, like wind through broken reeds. A shiver ran through the gathered crowd. Then silence. A silence that swelled and deepened until it burst into cruel laughter. "She is voiceless," someone cried. "She is nothing now," shouted another. Children covered their mouths, mocking her. Women spat at the ground near her knees. Men smirked, satisfied that the curse had worked. The girl pressed her hands to her throat, her eyes wide with horror. No matter how hard she tried, no sound emerged. Her songs, her laughter, her cries, all gone, stolen in a single cruel moment. Her stepmother smiled, eyes gleaming with triumph. From this night forth, she is no daughter, no singer, no woman. She is the Silent One. The title spread through the crowd like fire through dry grass. "The Silent One," they chanted. "The Silent One." The young woman collapsed forward, her tears soaking into the dust beneath her. The flames in the square flickered higher as if mocking her despair. The night swallowed her voice forever, leaving only the echo of cruel cheers ringing in her ears. Before she was the Silent One, before curses and ashes, the girl was a voice in the wind. Her songs carried through the fields and over the rooftops, soft and bright, lifting burdens from tired backs. Children followed her down narrow dirt paths, clapping their hands as she sang. Women wove baskets to the rhythm of her voice, and even the men returning from the hunt would pause to listen, saying, "Her song makes the forest kinder." It was said her voice could calm storms. Once, when thunder cracked above the village and rain threatened to flatten the harvest, she stood on the edge of the fields and sang. Her notes rose into the air, trembling yet strong, and the wind slowed. The storm passed with only gentle rain, leaving crops nourished rather than drowned. From that night, whispers spread, "She is blessed. Her voice carries power." But blessings to some were curses to others. Her stepmother watched with narrowed eyes. Every smile given to the girl felt like a thorn in her side. Every time the girl's voice drew laughter, the stepmother's jealousy grew heavier, darker. She began whispering her own songs, songs of poison, into the ears of neighbors. "You think her voice is a blessing?" she hissed while pounding grain beside the women. "Storms do not listen to girls. Spirits do. And spirits hunger for blood." At the market, she leaned close to elders and muttered, "Her voice is not her own. At night, I hear her singing to shadows. She sings to the dead." The lies took root, watered by envy. When a season of poor harvest struck, the whispers sharpened into blame. Maize shriveled before its time. Goats gave less milk. Children coughed with fevers that would not pass. Fear spread quickly in the village as it always did. Fear demanded a cause. And the stepmother offered one. "It is her songs," she told them, clutching her shawl as if afraid. "Every time she sings, the spirits gather. Have you not seen? She calls to them. She feeds them." The villagers remembered the storm she had calmed and shivered. What if she hadn't calmed it at all? What if she had spoken to it, bargained with it? A woman whose child lay ill spat into the dirt. If her voice can calm a storm, it can also call sickness. A farmer whose crops had withered nodded. Her voice is not ours, it belongs to curses. Soon the girl, once beloved, began to walk with eyes lowered, feeling stares like stones against her back. Children who once clapped to her songs now mocked her in whispers. Men who once praised her voice now warned their wives not to listen when she sang. The girl tried to fight the lies. She tried to keep singing, hoping her melodies would remind them of joy. But her songs only stirred unease. A hush would fall whenever she opened her mouth, and even the birds seemed to retreat into silence. Her stepmother stood tallest among the whisperers, her voice carrying above the rest. "The ancestors are angry," she cried one evening as villagers gathered. "Every drought, every sickness, every misfortune, they come when she sings. Her tongue poisons the air. Her voice binds us to sorrow." The crowd murmured, eyes shifting, and fear sealed their doubts into belief. When another storm rolled across the skies, this time flattening the harvest, the decision was sealed. The villagers turned their fear into action. "She must be silenced," an elder declared. "Silence will save us," another agreed. "Yes," the stepmother whispered, her lips curling into a smile too small for others to see. "Take her songs. Then the spirits will leave us." And so the seed of envy, planted in her stepmother's heart, blossomed into cruelty that would soon strip the girl of the very gift that made her who she was. The first day without her voice was heavier than chains. When the ritual ended, she staggered back to her hut, clutching her throat. She tried to call for her aunt, to beg for water, but nothing came, only breath, hollow and broken. Her lips moved, her chest heaved, yet no sound escaped. She felt as though her own body had betrayed her, as if the air itself had abandoned her lungs. The children followed her, mocking her with cruel delight. They clutched their throats and puffed their cheeks, letting out exaggerated breaths. Some covered their mouths with dirty hands and waddled like ghosts, chanting, "Silent one! Silent one!" Their laughter stabbed sharper than any blade. She turned away, eyes stinging. She wanted to shout, to sing, to tell them they were wrong, but silence wrapped her like a burial shroud. By evening she sat alone outside her hut, staring at the sky. The world felt emptied of color, emptied of sound. Even the birds refused to sing, and she wondered if they too had turned against her. The voices that once rose to meet hers, the rustle of trees, the hum of insects, seemed distant, muted, like echoes through water. When night deepened, she walked to the edge of the village where the graves lay beneath the baobab tree. Her feet carried her as if guided by memory. She knelt at her mother's grave, pressing her palms into the cool earth. Her lips trembled, but no words rose. Instead, tears slid silently down her cheeks, falling into the soil. She wanted to sing for her mother as she once had, soft lullabies that spoke of peace, of return, but the curse had stolen her gift. Only the rhythm of her sobs marked her presence. She pressed her forehead against the mound of earth and mouthed words that only the spirits could hear. "Mother, why must they hate me? Why did they strip me of my song?" A wind stirred the branches above, whispering through the leaves as if to answer. For a moment she thought she heard the faint echo of her own voice, but it was gone as quickly as it came. The sky above thickened with clouds, heavy and restless. Lightning flickered faintly at the horizon, casting pale shadows across the graves. She raised her head, eyes burning with both grief and defiance. The silence had not killed her. Not yet. She stood slowly, brushing dirt from her palms, and turned back toward the village. Behind her, the baobab shuddered in the rising wind, its branches groaning like an old man in pain. The air smelled of rain and something sharper, something waiting. As she walked through the narrow paths, doors creaked open and faces peered out. Whispers followed her. She cannot speak any more. The curse holds. She is no longer dangerous. But she saw the unease in their eyes, the way they clutched charms at their necks, as though even in silence she remained a threat. Inside her hut, she lay awake on her mat, staring at the roof beams. Her throat burned with the memory of songs, with the ache of words that would never again take shape. The children's laughter, her stepmother's triumphant smirk, the villagers' cruel chants, all pressed down on her like stones. Yet beneath the sorrow something else stirred. The silence was not empty. It was full, heavy, alive. Every breath she took seemed to hum faintly in her ears. Every heartbeat echoed as though the world itself leaned closer to listen. The night air pressed against her chest, thick with storm and secrets. When the first drops of rain tapped against her thatched roof, she did not flinch. She only closed her eyes, letting the silence swallow her whole. Outside, thunder rolled across the hills, long and low, like the voice she had lost, returning but not her own. The sky was gathering as if it too mourned the weight of her silence. The storm outside had deepened into a restless growl. Rain lashed the thatch above her hut, dripping through cracks to patter on the earth floor. She lay curled on her mat, eyes wide open, unable to sleep. Her throat ached, raw as if she had swallowed fire. At first she thought it was only pain, the curse tightening, her voice rotting in silence. But then the ache sharpened, burning, spreading from her throat into her chest. She clutched her neck, gasping, yet no cry escaped. And then she froze. From between her lips came a sound. A vibration she had not made. Low, deep, rolling like thunder caught in a cavern. Her eyes widened as her own mouth moved without her will. The voice that spilled forth was not hers. It was layered, strange, echoing, too old to belong to a girl of 19. It rumbled like the earth itself had found words. "They stole your song," it said, calm and terrible. "Shall I sing for you?" Her body trembled, pressed flat against the mat. She tried to close her mouth, but her lips stretched wider, moving with an eerie rhythm. The words dripped from her tongue like molten iron, heavy and unstoppable. Her hands shook as she pressed them against her face, trying to silence herself, but the voice only grew louder, resonating in the hut's walls. Clay jars rattled. The fire in the corner flared as though stirred by invisible breath. Outside, dogs began to howl. Somewhere, a rooster crowed in confusion, though it was deep night. The rain seemed to hush for a heartbeat, listening. Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted her own voice, her own song, not this monstrous echo twisting through her. Yet even in her terror she felt a shiver of recognition. The sound was wrong, yes, but it was powerful. Stronger than anything she had ever sung. "Shall I sing for you?" the voice asked again, softer now, almost coaxing. She shook her head violently, clawing at her throat, but her mouth curved into a faint smile not her own. The air in the hut thickened, pressing down like a hand upon her chest. Through the rain she thought she heard whispers outside, villagers stirring, uneasy, hearing something they should not. The fire guttered, shadows stretching long across the walls. Her reflection in a broken shard of clay pot seemed not her own. Her lips moved, but the eyes staring back were older, darker, filled with storm. At last the burning eased. Her lips stilled. The hut sank back into silence, broken only by the steady hammer of rain. She collapsed onto her mat, drenched in sweat, her body shaking as though she had run for miles. For the first time since the curse, sound had passed her lips. But it was not her voice. And the question still lingered in the air, heavy as thunder. "Shall I sing for you?" The storm raged long into the night, but Ebony barely heard the rain. Her body trembled as she sat upright on her mat, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, eyes wide with terror. She prayed silently, begging the strange voice to leave her, but the silence inside her chest was no longer her own. It stirred again. At first it was a hum, low and steady, like a drumbeat buried beneath the earth. Her lips quivered, and before she could stop herself, sound poured out once more. "You cannot silence me," the voice rumbled, thick and heavy. "You cannot silence truth." Ebony clutched her mouth with both hands, pressing hard, desperate to cage the sound inside her. But her lips moved under her palms, stretching, shaping words that were not hers. The voice laughed, deep, echoing, a sound that shook her ribs. "They believe you cursed," it said, almost amused. "Yet it is they who rot with secrets." Her heart pounded, panic rising, but the voice did not stop. It slipped into whispers now, sharp and cutting. Her body swayed as if dragged by unseen strings. "Do you wish to know their sins?" it murmured. "The elder who condemned you, he buries food at night so his neighbors will starve. The children who mocked you, one stole from his father's shrine and fears the spirits will come for him. The women who sneer at your silence, each has called on charms to keep their husband's eyes away from younger flesh." Ebony's eyes widened. She had never heard these things, never imagined such betrayals. Yet the voice poured them out with chilling certainty. She shook her head violently, but her mouth did not obey. The words slipped free, unrelenting, weaving through the dark. Her throat burned as if carved open for truth. Outside, the dogs barked again, sharp and frantic. A rooster crowed once more. And then soft footsteps. Someone had come near her hut. Her heart froze. Through the cracks in the wall, faint lamplight flickered. Voices whispered outside. She caught fragments. Did you hear it? A voice? But she is cursed. She cannot speak. Her chest heaved. The voice laughed again, low and mocking. Let them hear, it said. And then, against her will, her lips opened wider. Words spilled out, sharp and bright as lightning. The stepmother who cursed me lies beside her husband at night and dreams of his death. She wishes the house hers alone. She feeds her envy with your fear. Ebony slapped her hands to her mouth, tears blurring her eyes. She tried to hold the words back, but they surged like floodwaters through a broken dam. The healer's potions are bitter, not blessed. He drinks them himself to still his shaking hands. The hunter who boasts of his kills, he has left children starving so he may sell meat to strangers. The girls who jeer at me, they hide their scars, gifts from men who claim to honor them. The whispers outside her hut fell silent. Only the rain spoke now, hammering against the earth. Inside, Ebony shook uncontrollably. The voice was not hers, yet it came from her mouth, her breath, her body. She felt invaded, yet also powerful, terrified and awed in equal measure. She tried to scream, to force out her own voice, but only the others spoke, relentless. They stole your song. But they cannot silence truth. It must be sung and sung through you. Her tears streamed hot down her cheeks. She was trembling, suffocating, yet something inside her shifted. For the first time since the curse, the silence no longer felt like a coffin. It felt like a vessel. A doorway. The footsteps outside retreated quickly, hurried, as if the listeners carried ghosts on their backs. She heard a child whimper, a woman hiss for silence, a man mutter a prayer. Ebony collapsed onto the floor, clutching her throat. Her lips finally stilled. The fire dimmed. The storm rolled further into the hills, leaving only the drip of rain. Her breath came ragged, chest heaving. She was terrified, yet she could not deny the shiver of awe that lingered in her bones. Whatever the curse had stolen, something far greater had entered. And it would not leave her alone. The second night came heavy with heat. No rain fell, but the air pressed against the skin like wet cloth, suffocating. Ebony lay curled on her mat, exhausted from fear, yet sleep claimed her in jagged breaths. But the silence never lasted. At the stroke of midnight, her lips stirred. At first, only a hum slipped through, low and mournful. Her body shivered as though gripped by fever. Then the hum sharpened into words, not her own voice, but that deep, echoing sound that filled the hut like thunder. Listen. Her eyes remained closed, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm, yet her mouth moved with uncanny precision. The widow who begs for grain, she hides coins in her roof. She starves her own children so her hands will never work the field. The words crawled into the night, seeping through the cracks of her hut, winding into the dark village square. Dogs whimpered and slunk away. A passing night watchman stopped mid-step, ears straining, eyes wide. The council elder who carries the staff of truth, the voice intoned, touches the hands of girls when no one watches. He says it is blessing, but it is hunger. The guard dropped his lamp. The flames sputtered against the ground, sputtering in the dust. He ran, bare feet slapping hard against the earth. By dawn the whispers had spread. Children dared one another to creep near her hut, then came racing back, pale and breathless, shrieking, "The silent one speaks in the dark. She names secrets." Mothers clutched their beads tighter. Men muttered into their calabashes of beer. Women spat over their shoulders and crossed their arms, warding off unseen spirits. When the council met beneath the baobab tree, the square buzzed like a hive. Some demanded she be cast further away. Her silence was cursed, but now the dead use her tongue. Others, voices trembling, urged caution. Perhaps it is the ancestors. Perhaps she speaks truth we have buried. The stepmother stood tall, feigning sorrow but her eyes glinting sharp. It is her trickery, she declared. Even voiceless she poisons us. She must be banished, or burned. But murmurs rose louder, drowning her. If she speaks with the dead, one villager whispered, then to harm her is to anger them. The second night came and no one slept. They gathered in the shadows, huddled in doorways, crouched beneath windows. The air was thick with waiting. And then as the moon climbed high, it began again. From her hut came a low rumble, the sound of a drum struck in a cave. Then words, slow, deliberate. The healer hides a bone beneath his mat. He chants of medicine but feeds on blood when no one sees. Gasps rippled through the listeners. The healer himself stumbled backward, face pale. Her lips moved faster, the voice weaving through names, sins, betrayals. Secrets ripped into the open air like wounds torn wide. The hunter who boasts of lions, it was not he who killed. His brother fell and he took the skin as his prize. The wife who sings in the fields, she has lain with another, and prays each night the child will bear her husband's face. The villagers clutched one another, eyes wide in terror. They wanted to flee, yet their feet rooted to the ground. Someone whispered, trembling, "It is the ancestors. They speak through her." Another hissed, "No, it is the dead. She walks with ghosts." By dawn, the square was filled with rumors thick as smoke. Some claimed they had seen shadowy figures circling her hut as she slept. Others swore her eyes glowed though they were closed. Children cried and hid beneath mats. Men refused to leave their huts without charms bound around their wrists. The stepmother sat alone, face tight with fury but also with fear. If the girl's mouth continued to speak, it was only a matter of time before her own sins were laid bare. And in the quiet of her hut, unaware of the chaos she sowed, Ebony woke to find her throat aching, her lips raw. She touched her face, trembling, and whispered a soundless prayer. She had not spoken at all, yet her voice or something else had already torn her village apart. By the third night, the village no longer hid in whispers. They gathered in the square, some clutching charms, others pressing beads to their lips, all waiting. Fear and fascination burned together in their eyes. Inside her hut, Ebony lay still, her breath steady, but the shadows already trembled at the edges of her mat. At midnight the voice came. It burst from her mouth with the weight of thunder. She who called her daughter cursed, she fed the council lies with honeyed words. Gasps swept through the crowd. The stepmother froze among them, her face pale in the torchlight. She said the girl's song brought storms, the voice rumbled, but it was her envy that poisoned the air. The villagers turned slowly toward the stepmother. Her lips parted, but no words came. The voice laughed through Ebony's lips, hollow and cruel. She burned herbs in secret, calling sickness on her neighbors. Then she cried, "It is the girl's doing." She hid her hand while the child was blamed. The stepmother shook her head violently. "Lies. Spirits trick us," but her voice cracked, thin as dry reeds. The voice grew louder, shaking the walls. She silenced her, "But now we speak. We are many and we do not forget." Children whimpered and clutched their mothers. Men muttered prayers, their eyes darting between the sleeping girl and the trembling woman accused. The stepmother's knees gave way and she fell into the dust. Her body shook as though cold, though the night was thick with heat. She could not block the words, nor silence the truth unraveling in the air. "Her hands are red," the voice crooned. She took her husband's coin, she poisoned his trust. She envied the daughter's beauty, her voice, her light. So she stole it. But now the dead demand their song returned. The stepmother clutched her ears, but still the voice pressed in, relentless. She could hear her husband's name spoken, the truth of her betrayal, every lie dragged into the square. "No more," she screamed. "No more." But the villagers did not move to defend her. Instead they stepped back, eyes wide as if she were already cursed, already condemned. And through Ebony's lips came one final whisper, soft as breath but cutting deeper than a blade. "She silenced her, but she cannot silence us." The stepmother collapsed forward, trembling, her nails clawing at the earth. For the first time, she feared not the girl she had cursed, but the countless voices that now claimed her tongue. The third night came heavy with dread. No drums beat, no laughter rang, only the restless shuffle of feet as the villagers gathered once more. Torches flickered uneasily, their flames bending low as though bowing to something unseen. Inside her hut, Ebony sat rigid, afraid even to close her eyes. She pressed her palms to her mouth, hoping that somehow she might contain the voice within. But it was no longer hers to contain. When midnight struck, the silence shattered. Her body stiffened, her head jerked back, and her eyes flared with a glow not of this world, a pale, merciless light, like the moon reflected on a blade. Her lips parted, and the voice surged out with power that shook the walls. "You cursed her gift," it thundered, words stretching into the night. "Now the curse is yours." Ebony's hands dropped helplessly to her sides. Her chest rose and fell, but it was not she who breathed the words. The voice had claimed her as its vessel. The villagers stumbled back, clutching charms and amulets. The ground trembled, and from the edge of the square, dogs howled as if in mourning. The wind rose without warning. First a whisper, then a scream, tearing through the huts, lifting ash from the hearths, scattering embers into the dark. Roofs groaned, branches cracked, and the torches snapped out one by one. The villagers cried out, but the voice did not falter. Her song was for rain and you called it storm. Her words were for peace and you named them curses. You silenced the truth, so truth shall roar louder than your ears can bear. The air itself seemed to twist, pulling at their clothes, ripping at their skin with invisible hands. Mothers clutched their children close. Men fell to their knees, unable to stand against the gale. The stepmother, huddled on the ground, screamed as the voice called her name. Zelira. You who envied the child. You who fed their fear. You who turned love into poison. Your lies fed this curse, now drink what you have poured. The crowd's eyes fixed on her. No longer did they see Ebony's stepmother, they saw the root of the storm, the source of their shame. Zelira trembled, her hair whipping wildly, her face streaked with tears and dust. Please, she cried, her words ripped away by the wind. Please forgive me. But the voice only laughed, deep and echoing, like 100 throats speaking at once. Forgiveness is not ours to give. You silenced her song, but you cannot silence us. We are the voices of the wronged. We are the voices of the earth. We are the voices you buried. With each declaration, the wind surged higher, snapping wooden fences, sending clay pots shattering against the ground. Sparks whirled into the night, until the entire square glowed like the mouth of a furnace. The villagers cried out together, some begging the spirits for mercy, others pressing their faces into the dirt. Through it all, Ebony's body stood rigid, her glowing eyes fixed upon them, her lips shaping words she did not choose. She felt herself suspended in that storm, a witness trapped inside her own skin. And then, as suddenly as it began, the voice fell silent. The wind collapsed, dropping the village into a hushed, broken stillness. Ash floated in the air, glimmering in the moonlight. The torches relit themselves one by one as though unseen hands touched them. Ebony collapsed to her knees, gasping, the glow fading from her eyes. But the echo of the words still hung over the square, heavy as chains. The villagers looked to one another, pale and shaking, their fear carved deep. And when their eyes fell on her, they did not see the cursed silent one. They saw the vessel of something greater, something they could neither silence nor command. The stepmother lay sobbing in the dust, her voice hoarse and broken. She knew now, her lies had awoken a judgment she could never escape. And in the heavy stillness, all could hear the whisper, soft yet vast, like the breath of the sky itself. This is only the beginning. The night after the storm, the village lay in ruins of silence. The fires had been rekindled, but no laughter or singing rose from the huts. Fear lingered like smoke, seeping into every breath. At first, the people tried to go on with their daily lives. Women fetched water, men mended tools, children played with sticks in the dust. But something was wrong. When a boy stubbed his toe, his cry came without sound. His lips opened wide, his face twisted in pain, but no voice followed. His mother rushed to him, clutching her throat in terror. She tried to call out. Nothing came. Her scream was swallowed by the air. One by one the villagers discovered it. A father calling for his goats found only silence. A grandmother scolding children moved her lips like a fish pulled from water. The council gathered, desperate to speak, but their words were stolen, leaving them mouthing emptiness. The curse had spread. Only one voice remained in the village, and it was not her own. At midnight, the girl woke again to the familiar burn in her throat. She pressed her hands to her lips, shaking her head, but it made no difference. The voice poured out, deep and echoing, carrying across the huts. They silenced you. Now silence belongs to them. The villagers rushed to the square, their faces pale, their mouths opening in frantic pleas that no one could hear. They looked like shadows miming their fear, their eyes wide with helplessness. The girl stood in the center, her hair whipping in the wind that rose with the voice. She wanted to tell them she was not the one doing this, that she too was trapped. But the voice spoke through her instead. This place of laughter, of song, of life, you turned it to cruelty. Now hear nothing but your own heart's beating. Let the silence you gave her choke your throats. The villagers fell to their knees, clawing at the air as though to catch their stolen voices. Some wept, tears streaming silently down their cheeks. Others buried their faces in the dirt, their shoulders shaking. The stepmother was there too, her lips trembling, opening and closing like a broken drum. She reached out to the girl, begging with her eyes, but no sound came. The voice inside the girl turned toward her, cold and merciless. You stole her song because your own heart was hollow. Now you will never hear your lies again. Zelira, the stepmother, collapsed, pounding her fists into the ground, her body racked with a scream the world refused to carry. The square that once held feasts and dances became a place of silence and terror. No music, no chants, not even the soft murmur of prayer. Only the sound of the cursed voice speaking through the girl, filling the void left behind. And in that terrible hush, the people realized the truth. The girl they mocked as the Silent One was now the only voice left in the village, and it was not hers. The silence was their punishment. And her body, trembling beneath the weight of the spirit, was the vessel that carried it. By dawn, the elders gathered beneath the baobab tree, their faces ashen. The night had left the village hollow, stripped of its sound. No birds called from the branches, no goats bleated in the pens, no children's chatter danced through the air. Only silence, thick, suffocating silence, hung everywhere, broken only when her lips parted and the other voice emerged. The elders brought gourds of herbs, bowls of ash, and sacred beads. They traced circles around the girl as she stood trembling in the square, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. She shook her head, wanting them to see she had no control, but still they pressed forward. They chanted silently, mouths moving in prayer but no sound rising. Drums were beaten, but their skins echoed only dull thuds, empty of resonance. Frustration spread through the council. One elder sprinkled ash over her head, another tied charms around her wrists. The girl fell to her knees, whispering within herself, "Please let it end. Please give them back their voices." But the voice inside her only laughed. They thought songs could be stolen. They thought silence was a weapon. Songs do not die, they only change singers. And now I sing. The girl's body shook as the words poured from her mouth, rich and thunderous, filling the air like a storm's roll. The elders stepped back, trembling. Some tried again to call to the ancestors, but their throats betrayed them. No sound passed their lips. The people watched from the edges of the square, fear stamped across their faces. Mothers clutched their children, men gripped their spears though they dared not lift them. The girl was no longer seen as the outcast or the cursed child. She was something else, something untouchable. A vessel. A voice not her own. The stepmother, Zelira, pushed through the crowd, her face streaked with dirt and ash. She dropped to her knees before the girl, clutching at her dress. Tears ran down her cheeks as she mouthed soundless pleas, but the voice gave no mercy. You mocked her song. You called her a ghost. And yet, when you silenced her, you gave birth to me. The girl's eyes burned with tears, shaking her head violently as if begging the voice to stop. She did not want this power. She wanted her own voice, her soft, warm songs that once brought peace. But that gift was gone. In its place was something vast, unknowable, divine. The elders, defeated, lowered their charms and stepped back. One of them dropped his staff in the dust, mouthing words that all could read. She is no longer ours to bind. The villagers bowed their heads, some in reverence, others in fear. The silence that once mocked her now became the mark of the sacred. Children whispered to one another with their eyes wide, "She is the voice of the dead." From that night onward, no ritual, no prayer, no offering could undo the curse. The girl remained, a victim and vessel in one. Whenever the voice rose through her lips, the air trembled, carrying truths the people dared not hear. They feared her. They honored her. They avoided her. And when storms gathered on the horizon, villagers huddled in their huts, whispering with their eyes only, would the voice speak tonight? The Silent One was silent no longer. She had become something sacred, something terrifying. A living reminder that words, once stolen, would always find another way to return. And the voice within her was not done. Years slipped past, and yet the memory of that cursed night never loosened its grip on the village. Children grew into parents, parents into elders, but when firelight flickered in the evenings and storms rumbled on the horizon, the story always returned. They said she never truly left. Some whispered that she still lived among them, her hut by the river hidden by tall reeds and shadows. Others claimed she had vanished into the forest, carried away by spirits. But all agreed on one thing: the girl whose voice was stolen had become something more than human, something the living dared not disturb. On quiet nights, when the river's surface shimmered like glass, villagers claimed to see her seated on the bank. Her figure was thin, almost spectral, wrapped in faded cloth. Her head bowed, her lips moved slowly, yet no sound escaped. Children peered from behind their mothers, wide-eyed. "Is she praying?" one would ask in a whisper. "No," another would murmur. "She's listening." And then came the strangest part. Though no sound came from her lips, voices seemed to fill the air, voices not her own. Low murmurs drifting like mist, overlapping, echoing. Sometimes the voices spoke words of sorrow, sometimes warnings, sometimes laughter that made the dogs bark furiously in the night. Those who dared draw closer swore her lips moved in perfect rhythm with the voices, though her throat remained still. She was a vessel as she had been on that cursed night. But now it was no longer only one voice within her, it was many. Her stepmother, long buried beneath the earth, was said to be among them. Some swore they had heard Zelira's weeping carried on the wind, her cries rising from the girl's unmoving lips. Others claimed to hear the voices of their own lost kin, whispering secrets only the dead would know. Fear clung to the people, but so too did reverence. The riverbank became forbidden ground. No one fetched water there at night, no one lingered when the sun dipped low. Children were told, if you hear a voice calling your name from the river, do not answer. For it may not be hers, it may be the one that never left. And always the storms returned. When thunder cracked the sky and lightning danced above the baobab, the villagers huddled close to their hearths. The winds would howl, carrying a chorus that no one dared mistake for ordinary. It was not the sound of one girl's stolen song. It was two voices, woven together like shadow and flame. One was hers, soft, mournful, lingering with the ache of what had been lost. The other was older, deeper, unearthly. A voice that belonged to no living throat, heavy with judgment and fire. Together they filled the night, reminding the village of the curse they had birthed with their own cruelty. The silent one was silent no more. And so, her story lived on. Elders told it to children around the fire, their faces glowing with the crackling flames. She was mocked for her voice, so they stole it. But voices cannot be taken, only transformed. Now she speaks for the ones beyond, and she waits by the river, lips moving with words that are not her own. The younger ones shivered, drawing their blankets tighter. The older ones bowed their heads in uneasy respect. Because everyone knew, it was not just a story. On stormy nights, when the wind howled through the huts and the rain lashed against the roofs, the people heard it again. Two voices rising together, carried through the storm, woven into the fabric of the night. Hers. And the one that never left.